Welcome to the Uncanny Lens, where we are exploring self-concept reflections in pop culture and media. I'm your host, Jinx Kelly.
And I am Minx. Welcome, everyone. It's been a while. I am so excited to talk about this movie. Ever since I first saw it, I was just like, oh my gosh, I feel seen as a mother for the first time in a very long time, if ever, by the media. So that was really exciting. Yeah, so today we're going to be discussing Nightbitch, which came out in 2024. And as of January 2025, it has 4 wins and 10 nominations for different awards. It is starring Amy Adams as mother, Scoot McNairy as husband, and Arlie and Emmett Snowden as the son. I just realized that they don't have names for the characters, and I didn't realize that until after watching the movie and going back and reflecting on it, which is so funny.
I noticed that when I was looking up their
Right?
IMDb, it just said mother. And we can get into this more, but they're specifically called mother, husband, and son.
Yeah, it's basically going into these different archetypes and really looking at that without making it super personal, which I really liked. It's based on a book by the same name by Rachel Yoder. Anyway, published in July 2021. And it's streaming on Hulu right now. So before we get into that, I want to know what is new in your media mindset.
That feels like a loaded question right now. There's a lot going on in the media. My attention has obviously been with what was going on with TikTok.
Mm-hmm.
And I also have had my attention elsewhere with the current events that continue to just happen at a rate that's impossible to keep up with. That's intentional for there to be an overload of information.
Yeah.
And that's a lot. So I have been trying to focus on media that really inspires me right now and comforts me. So I haven't been taking in a lot of new media. I haven't been watching a lot of new shows. I know I have several episodes of The Traitors waiting for me to watch, but I just haven't been able to dig into anything because I've been really looking to get grounded and to find some comfort. Something new that I'm doing is I've been looking for comfort movies, and a lot of the movies I find to be comfort movies I haven't been able to find on streaming. Movies like You've Got Mail, Sleepless in Seattle, Return to Me. Those are some of my movies that I like to go to when I need a warm blanket around me, And so I've started ordering hard copies of media again. I also went to go watch The Hunger Games the other night, and it isn't streaming anywhere either. So I just ordered myself a copy, and I really feel like it's something that's important right now because I just heard this week that Netflix is about to raise their prices again, and this is just getting fucking ridiculous. So I'm just going to keep my favorite movies around so I can watch them whenever I want and not have to keep paying these disgusting, greedy CEOs and corporations to be able to access media. It's just disgusting.
Agreed. Oh my gosh,
so
yeah.
That's what's going on in my media mindset this week.
Yeah, it's so funny. I feel like I resonate with a lot of that. I have been taking a break from Instagram, especially lately, which was a platform that I used quite often. So I deleted it from my phone. I have not really been engaging there. I've never really been into TikTok, so that whole thing didn't really impact me. But I've been kind of just trying to stay away from any media that is geared toward really upsetting my nervous system and working me up. So one of the things that I've just been kind of avoiding the news, to be perfectly honest, and not going on any social media sites to kind of just stay a little bit off to the distance, I would say. I've noticed myself getting so worked up and so upset, and it was impacting my sleep for a while, and that was just really tricky getting out of that funk. So Yeah, I've noticed an improvement in sleep and just overall quality of life since kind of cutting those pieces out of my daily routine, which is good.
I think it's really important that you said that about giving yourself a break right now from news and media. There also is a boycott going on with Meta products. And so I have deleted Facebook Messenger from my phone after I read some articles and listened to some videos explaining how it is basically like a virus and is stealing your data and anybody else's data who connects to the same Wi-Fi that you connect to, even if they don't have Messenger. I mean, they have profiles on people who never even signed up for Facebook. It is a virus. That's all that we can really say about it, in my opinion, at this point. Really think it's important that you said that you're taking a break, though, because I think a lot of times it's easy for people to criticize and say, oh, you're just sticking your head in the sand, or you're being privileged because this doesn't affect you, or it must be nice to be able to disconnect and whatever. I think that it can really be a form of self-harm to overexpose yourself to this type of rhetoric and narrative that we are seeing in legacy media and corporate media right now.
Well, and it's designed to influence us, you know?
100%.
So not only am I, getting this information, but I'm being influenced in the process. And I just don't want to be a puppet.
And that's really why everything that we're creating in the Venturalverse and with this podcast exists, is because we want you to be able to take control back from these motherfuckers who are trying to influence you with their own narratives that are serving their agenda.
Yeah.
We want you to be true to yourself and what you want for yourself. And so please know that taking a break from this overwhelming avalanche of information is really healthy. It does not mean that you're sticking your head in the sand. You have no reason to feel guilt or shame for taking a break to take care of yourself. That is self-care. If you continue to activate your nervous system in a way that's harmful by engaging with this media, you are self-harming. And that is something you need to pause and think about. Why are you fucking doing that to yourself? I just want to get real with y'all because shit is fucking real right now. And we need to be regulated, or we are not going to be able to do what we need to do. So we need to be regulated.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you for letting me chime in there and sharing why I think it's so important that you're doing that. And I'm so glad that you brought that up. And now I would love to hear what you're excited about, what the other thing is that you were getting ready to say.
Yeah. So one of my favorite shows from back in the day, I guess it was filmed during the pandemic. It's been a few years on hiatus, and it's Severance, an Apple TV show. And the new season just came out, and I realized that I had completely forgotten what happened in the first season. So this week I rewatched season 1 and just started the first episode of season 2, and it's so good. I love the characters. I love this like awakening theme that's kind of going on, and like fighting against these big companies and big corporations. These are all themes that happen in this story, and I just think it's so well done. It's funny, interesting, it's weird, it's got some of the like surrealism aspects, and it's David Lynch recently passed away, and he was one of my favorite filmmakers, and this kind of sets a little bit of the tone of, and you can see how this story was like probably influenced by some of his work. So that's just been really fun for me to engage with this week. And it feels good in my body.
That's amazing. I have not watched that show, but I do like a lot of other Apple shows. I really enjoy The Morning Show, and I really enjoy Bad Sisters. I think I'll check it out. And I definitely love the idea of rebelling against these corporations. So that's something that sounds very exciting. It sounds like I would really enjoy it. Thanks for
Yeah,
sharing that.
definitely. Of course. Yay. Well, let's get into the topic for this week, Nightbitch. Oh my gosh, I've been so inspired by this show since I watched it a few weeks ago. I think I watched it at the end of December, right before Christmas. And a brief summary of it is that there's this woman, Amy Adams is the actress, and when you first see her, she's a stay-at-home mom. She's got this routine of raising her toddler in the suburbs. We find out later on that she was an artist, and a pretty significant one, and that her husband travels a lot for work, so she's often left alone with this baby, with this toddler. I think he is around 2. And she just slowly starts embracing this feral power that's deeply rooted in motherhood. You see a lot of flashbacks to her own mother and her own childhood. And as she becomes increasingly aware of this like bizarre and undeniable signs that she may be turning into a dog. And it's funny because it is so accurate to the way that I have felt at times as a mom who also co-sleeps with her toddler, also kind of is home as the primary caregiver. It's really been an opportunity for me to feel connected to other mothers and to just motherhood in general by recognizing that this is like a story that resonates with so many and not just me.
When you first texted me about this movie and you said that you felt so seen, I didn't know much about the movie except for sort of the summary that you just described. And I was like, wait a minute, should I be concerned about this? Because doesn't this lady think she's turning into a dog in the movie? I definitely was attracted to the movie because it sounds weird and I like things that are weird.
Mhm.
I have not been a fan of Amy Adams in the past. And so that sort of was my hesitation in watching it.
Mm.
But I really wanted to see what you were connecting with because
Yeah.
I love you and I care about you. And I wanted to try to understand what, your experience may be. And so I started watching this movie and just became more concerned that you were relating to this because I was like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
What the fuck? Like, so as the movie went on and came to the close, I, understood some different things. But I'm so excited to be able to talk to you about this today because there was so much going on and there was such
Mhm.
a shift in her self-concept and
Yeah.
in her husband's self-concept in this
Yeah.
movie. And I'm just so excited to talk about it.
Let's start out there then. At the beginning of the movie, kind of looking at the mother's self-concept, we see her, the first scene is kind of her in this grocery store, and she sees an old friend that she runs into when she's got her kid. And, she first off responds to a question that's like, how are you? And she goes into like how she really feels. She's like, this is the real shit. And then we find out later that's not what she actually says, but that's what she wants to say. That's like what's in her mind, right?
I like that
Mhm.
continues throughout the movie, actually,
Yeah.
because I feel like we kind of get to see her inner world.
Yeah.
And what I'm going to talk about is like parts talking
Mhm.
through that
Yeah.
voice, right? Like this
Yeah.
is what we really want to say, but this is what we're repressing
Well,
to be
yeah.
able to like fit in and not be judged and stay safe in the world.
Right. Because we live in this kind of controlled society, and there's this need to connect with our primal side that she taps into and that this movie taps into. And I feel like when you are in this like phase of motherhood for the first few years of your child's life, there's so many things that you're just thrown into that are so different than what your body and your system is used to before having a child. It's not just the pregnancy and giving birth, but it's like the side effects of not sleeping well, like your body changing, not looking the same. You have these different hormone shifts that are like very prevalent. There's like the whole breastfeeding thing. God, I breastfed for 2 years, 9 months of my child's life. So that's a significant amount of time that you're basically giving your body over to somebody else.
Mm.
And just there's this one scene where she's like, I just need to be not touched. I just want there to be like 1 minute where nobody's touching me. The cat like tries to crawl on her lap and she kicks it off. She's like, sorry, I just don't want anybody to need me right now. And I relate to that so much. It's just like, oh my gosh, can I please just have a peace and quiet and like a moment to yourself? But like the self is so in conflict and so confused in those first years of motherhood that you're like, who am I? What am I? Like, what is myself? Because my old self is gone. Like, she has, she tries to meet up with her old friends from the years where she was like single and living in the city and doing amazing art. And she just
her sort
couldn't.
of like artsy, fartsy friends.
Exactly. And she couldn't be there with them like that. It just felt so, she didn't fit in anymore. You know what I mean? Like her new self just didn't fit in with the old self. And so there's this mourning process that happens, and there's just so much that goes through you, and it's so hard to articulate, and it's impossible to predict that you understand or know what is going to happen. So she says, oh, I agreed to be this like stay-at-home mother, but I didn't know what I was agreeing to.
Right.
Like I had no idea what this would take from me and what this would take out of me.
I think that's one of the things that has always been so profound about having a child for me personally, and why. I mean, I had medical issues that got in the way of that, but it was also partially a decision of my own to wait. And it was because that is something you kind of like don't know what you're getting into until you're into it. I mean, I guess everything's really that way. If we want to be honest, you really don't know what you're asking for when we desire something, because you don't know if you're going to truly enjoy everything that comes with it when you manifest or receive that thing. And I think that this is one of those things. Yeah, you can't like take this back.
There's no take backs.
Right. And it's I wasn't sure, and so the better option was just no until I was sure, and unfortunately the medical stuff got in the way before I could make that decision for myself in the end. But yeah, it had to stay until I was absolutely sure. And I just wasn't. And I think it's common for people to say things like, oh, well, it'll never be the right time, or you'll never have enough money, or you'll never be sure. And it's like, okay, that's okay, because we're playing with someone's life, like literal life. And that wasn't something that I was personally willing to do. I didn't feel confident enough that I could give a child a better life than I had, and mine had been traumatic. And so it was a no.
Yeah, and luckily we live in a time where that's perfectly acceptable. It's not like a part of our society as much as it was when especially like grandparents and great-grandparents were having kids. That was an expectation set upon women back then. This new administration is doing their best to kind of force us back into the Stone Ages. But I don't see that. Women putting up with that change. I don't see that happening.
It's just a really big commitment. And
it is
something that I unfortunately don't feel confident that a lot of people fully think through.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying their decision. I don't think they don't think their decision through. That's not what I'm saying. Again, it's this idea that like you don't know what you're getting into until you're into it. And in this discussion that we're talking about that Amy Adams as mother was having with her husband, it was related to this, like, I didn't agree to disappearing. I didn't agree to living in an echo of what my fucking life used to be. I don't know if it's in the same conversation or a later one, but he says at one point, like, what happened to my wife? And she says she died in childbirth.
Yep.
That was just like, whoa, that is so fucking powerful.
Profound.
And I haven't experienced anything like that because of having a child. But I did experience a loss of my identity with disability and illness. And that's one way that I related to this is, I feel like a version of me died when I started experiencing health challenges and disability.
Yeah, it's like that young, carefree, kind of happy-go-lucky version is like there's no space for her anymore when she has to deal with literal shit all the time
Oh,
and somebody crawling on top of her back constantly and yeah, just giving over her body and her time and her everything about herself is essentially what this demonstrates. And that's, what I experienced as well, very strongly.
and then there's like life going on as normal, and you
Right.
just are
Yeah.
watching it. It's kind of like everybody else is on a treadmill, right? Everybody
Yeah.
else is on a treadmill. They're still moving, and it feels like I'm kind of standing still. And it's like kind of scary to jump on that treadmill because you might trip and fall because it's fucking
Hmm.
moving like 3 miles an hour or whatever, and you're just standing still, and you got to like
Yeah.
run to like jump on the treadmill again.
Right.
And I don't even want to. But it's
Well,
like
it's
really weird to watch
yeah.
everything else going on as if everything's normal, and you're like,
Mhm.
but wait a minute, it's not.
Well, so yeah, exactly. And following the rules of this like society and the world, how they've always been, stopped working for her. And so that's when
Mm.
we see this like magical book enter her world and she's tapping into this primitive urge. She plays puppy with her kid and she's like finding a new version of herself that works for her in this way where and it's almost like she's able to connect with her son in a more profound way while she's tapping into this like previously kind of taboo and inaccessible archetype that's like crazy. There's that scene where they're like eating lunch at the grocery store and
Right.
she's
And
just like
I would describe it as wild. It's very wild. Like you said primal earlier. She's very wild. She's like, I am a wild fucking woman. Question about the book and Norma, the character in general. Was she real? I've watched the
ooh,
movie
yeah.
twice now, and both
Mhm.
times I was like, is this real? Because we see so many other instances of her sort of dissociating from reality to give us an
Mhm.
insight into her inner world, right?
Yeah,
And then we see that in the present, and then we also see it in the past because she has some flashbacks
to
to
her mother.
memories with her mother, and she even talks about like, why are these memories coming up for me now?
Mhm.
And I
Yeah.
think that that is something that a lot of people go through when they are recovering from things they didn't understand or things that were traumatic from
Yeah.
their past or especially their childhood. And it's like, why is this coming up for me now? Why am I thinking about this all the time now? Why is it I'm like cooking pasta and suddenly I'm thinking of this? Like, what the fuck is going on?
Well, because it's an opportunity to heal that experience, right? So when we go through motherhood, there's so many opportunities to heal inner child wounds. And that's something that I've found over and over and over again. It's like, okay, wow, my initial reaction to that situation reminds me of something my mother would have done. And then it's like, oh wow, that was that feeling. That was that like moment where I felt less than or unworthy or XYZ. And
Mm,
so now I've got an opportunity to do something different and respond differently to my child so that we're not carrying over those patterns into this next generation.
That's so beautiful. Given that you are able to be aware of that in the moment. And
Mhm.
my next question would be, well, I have two
Not every
questions.
moment. I'm not able to
Well,
do that in
sure,
every moment.
sure. Nobody's capable of that. So, are you able to also acknowledge your younger versions of yourself in those moments and say, this is what we needed, or this is how things could have
Yes,
been different
yes.
for us? Because
Can I
that's
give you
like,
an example?
I would love that.
So I mentioned the co-sleeping earlier, and this is something that she in the movie is like, oh my God, I just loved the feeling of having him on top of me. And so then we
Mm,
establish these harmful sleeping patterns that'll, blah, blah, blah. One of the things I actually am a huge proponent for co-sleeping. I think that it's done so much for my daughter and so much for me as well, because when I was little, I was forced to sleep all alone. And I have hated cuddling, hated it. Like,
mm,
do not enjoy cuddling. Like any partner I've ever had, sharing a bed with them has been a challenge. And I am grumpy if I get touched in the middle of the night or
wow.
like But because my child has needed me and like cuddling with she is a very, very cuddly person. Like she's just like just about the opposite of that, right? So, but through cuddling her, like my child self has like gotten to be cuddled as well, right? So there's this like beautiful thing that happened that I was able to receive the cuddling and not just give it.
I
Like
love that.
receive that love, receive that like energetic connection that you get from, holding another person. Yeah. So that's been a huge thing that's healed me in motherhood and with motherhood. But initially, oh my God, like it was awful. Like it was
Mm.
so hard for me to get over that bump to actually accept and embrace it.
That's so wild how we can get disconnected from the thing that is the most healing
Yeah.
to us, which is touch and co-regulation and community. And we get disconnected and in some ways taught that it's shameful or something that we should feel weird about wanting. It's so bizarre.
Yeah.
So my other question was about this magical book and the character of Norma, because I asked, was she real? So was she real? Because you demonstrated that you're able to sort of like find that inside of you. And so was this
Yes.
character and this book a metaphor for something that Mother found inside of her
Or her
and was
future self.
right? I mean, I just
Mhm.
because when she was in the grocery store and they were eating like doggies,
Yeah.
and Norma came over,
And
remember? And then,
participated. Yeah.
right. And then Norma kind of walked off, but Mother was yelling, wait, wait, like, I have more questions. Like, tell me. And it's like Norma couldn't hear her. And so I was like, wait a minute, is this bitch real or not?
I think she represented kind of this like future elder wise archetype within the mother that maybe she's like starting to recognize, but hasn't like yet quite tuned into that wavelength yet. But like she's there inside of her, but she hasn't firmly planted roots yet. Like that's who she's becoming.
I love that. Okay, that brings me to one of the quotes that I wanted to share actually that really felt so profound to me.
Yeah.
And this is as she was really at the point where she was starting to embrace all of this, right? And she says, I am a woman. I am an animal. I am new and also ancient. I have been ashamed, but I will be no more.
Yeah, that
That's
gives me
my favorite
goosebumps
line
every
from the
time
whole
I hear
movie.
it. Yeah.
Would you say it gives you chills?
It gives me goosebumps. Yeah,
Goosebumps,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I resonate with that so deeply. And I think that one of the things that we don't really understand that's going to happen when, it feels like so much is being taken from us when we become a mother, which is kind of where she is at the beginning of the story, is that she feels like she's just being taken from and she's being depleted. But what she's getting and what she kind of occurs to her towards the end is like what she's gained. And she's gained this wisdom. She's gained this confidence. She's gained this um, like ability to tap and tune into this other side of her that is like ancient and wild and wise, At the beginning of the story, we see this like drained, empty, depleted person, right? And at the end, she is able to like use motherhood as a transformative experience to turn her into the next iteration of herself, which is this really powerful motherfucking person. She is, yeah. Amazing. Yeah.
I feel like for me, when I was watching this movie, there were a lot of places that she had small shifts in her self-concept. But the one that really, like, as I watched the movie, even on the second watch of the movie, both times, when she runs off and starts chasing the dogs at the park with her son,
Yeah.
I started crying because I feel like that's where it shifted for her because all those dogs like were coming and they're like, and she was like, oh gosh, like, why do all these dogs love me? And then they just took off and she was like, wait, we're coming with you. And then they just got up and started running and they ended up having this like playful moment, her and her son together. And she starts to embrace that sort of following what feels good in the moment more and more and more.
And not caring what other people think.
Yes. And as she does that, she also allows her son to do that, which brings them closer together from my perspective as I was watching
Totally. Well, she's able to relate to him. She's able to play with him. And that's the other thing about being a parent is when you get to play, like when you're in the play zone with your kid and it's like you get where their mind is in this world that they're in. Like that is one of the most magical spaces that exists in the human experience.
I agree with you. And I feel like for me, it's one of the most important things in life. And it's this kind of ability to play along or like pretend. And I have that kind of relationship with somebody in my life who's very, very important to me. And when we are not around each other for very long, or maybe we are not communicating very much because we're resolving conflict, it's like a void. It's like a void inside of me because he's one of the only people who plays along and pretends with me in the world. And I really needed that as a child. I wasn't really allowed to do that with anybody except for other children. And generally it was the children sort of like in my family rather than a lot of outside friends, like friends that I feel like maybe I didn't feel safe enough to really let that part of me come out. And these types of more precarious relationships, when you're a kid, relationships feel kind of fragile. Anyway, they did to me. They did to me.
Yeah. Well, it's scary when you start the abandonment stuff can show up and that's like, oh wow, like people can come and go, like that's really terrifying when you're a kid.
I'm curious to know where you felt you see her self concept really start to shift in this movie.
There's the scenes where she just feels like kind of tuned out and like zonked and tired. But then there's like moments even when she's in that space where, they're in bed and she's like, oh, I just want to go to sleep. Like, please just go to sleep. Please just fucking sleep. I've been in that moment. But then
she's like,
he's like,
maybe if I don't move, he won't see me.
He won't see exactly. But then he like comes up and she's like, I love you, and they're like interacting like, mwah, in a lovely way.
Yes, it's so
she
sweet.
Was being sweet. So, there even when she's in those moments of like just suffering, like you can feel the suffering, right? She still has that like ability to connect. But I think you're right. When the dogs show up is a big moment. And when she like, I think it was like, oh, mommy, you're fuzzy when she's playing horsies or something, and then she, that in that instance, she was like not really able to be very engaging, acting like an animal. But then there was like something that happened right after that where she was like, okay, now I'm just going to fucking embrace this. We're going to dive headfirst into this dog world, And then
well, because I think it was the accumulation of noticing that she was growing hair on her back, that her teeth were sharp, and that she kept noticing that her sense of smell had been increasing. So I think that it was like sort of realizing all of these things is when she started to say, fuck it. Like if I'm kind of turning into an animal or I'm having all of these animalistic instincts come out, I'm just going to do it. And then at one point she says, is this the secret to happiness? And I was like, fuck yeah, that's so cool. It is. I really think it is. And that's why we all feel like we're fucking dying inside is because we are not doing these primal things that are encoded in our DNA.
Yeah, we need to. I know we're too controlled in our society. I think that another moment was when she was at the dinner party and she just like leaves, right? That whole incident.
Yes.
She's like, oh, I actually don't give a shit what these people think of me anymore. And I'm just not like, I don't want to be here. So we're going to go do something else now. Like this is what my old self would have done. This is what my old self wanted and needed, but I'm not there anymore. And that's okay.
Well, I know you want to talk about husband, and I think it's really
Yeah.
important because I think a lot of people often want to change their partner or see their partner change. And so there is, agreements or discussions or requests or boundaries or whatever, and maybe you still don't see the change. And what I really loved about this story was we saw that mother just like took herself back. She was like not happy with the way anything was going, and that is actually what prompted her partner, husband, to make his shifts. Because I didn't expect that to happen. I thought this was going to be one of those stories about this woman finding herself and moving on with her life without him. I did not expect to see the shift that I did in him. So I'm really curious about your thoughts on this.
Yeah. I feel like at the beginning, he's just kind of aloof. Like he's so frequently, like we see him say what's very clearly the wrong thing to her, and she'll like pretend, in her mind she slaps him, but that's not really what she does, right?
I wanted to slap him. When he said that one thing to her, I cannot believe she did not rip his throat out.
You just have to stick with a routine. And it's so laughable because like I've found myself in this situation as well. And it's like, it's so funny that when you become a mom and you're like, you just don't have the ability to put up with men's bullshit anymore. And like, oh my God, there's also a part of you that's just not attracted to them anymore because their purpose is ended. They're useless to you. Like they don't, perfectly. I'm being honest. It's like, okay, you got what you needed, and I don't need him to like me anymore. I don't care that I'm getting fat and I'm hairy.
You can leave now.
Like she doesn't need him anymore, and so she like almost is driving him away in a lot of ways, right? And she's repulsed by him in a lot of situations, right?
I think she also is realizing that she doesn't need him because she mentions to him several times, like, I do this when you're not here.
Yeah.
Why do you seem to need so much help from me? Like, what the fuck, dude? Or like, I guess I'm just used to doing everything on my own. And he gives her this look like, wow, like he's so offended. And it's like, you showed her that you're literally worthless to her with the exception of earning money. So she stays at home and raises your children, your child, you're meaning both of their child.
Yeah.
And so to be giving attitude to her and telling her how she should be living and how she should be doing things. And then when he was uncomfortable with what she was doing with like the, embracing the wildness and feralness with her son. And he was like, what? So you're treating him like a dog? See, I can't even talk about this guy without giving him a whiny little voice.
Oh, the judgment.
Because I just wanted to, like, I completely understand why she was like, dude, get the fuck out.
Yeah, this is not going to work for me if you're going to bring that judginess in here. Like, this is finally working for me, and now you're going to...
Like, I'm doing this all on my own anyway. Yeah.
I think that once he recognized that, oh, wow, like, I'm not necessary here, like, I'm not needed, and once she starts taking back, like, her artistic self, he recognizes, oh wow, okay, I need to my self-concept and like my attitude something needs to change on my end because so much has changed without me even noticing. Like I think that's the other thing, is he was so unpresent and so disconnected that he didn't even realize these shifts were happening, and he was annoyed by them because it was like kind of happening so invisibly.
When she tried to get him to play along when they were having breakfast that one morning,
totally,
and she held up the piece of bacon and she was like, beg. And he was like, nah, nah. And then he finally did like play. I was just like, God, you suck. You're no fun. She's trying so hard, dude. Shut the fuck up. I'm just so over it. I just want to have fun, and I'm just so over this. So he just really annoyed me.
I get it. I totally get it. Yeah. So what do you think about him towards the end of the story, like at the end?
I completely had a different opinion about him. I felt really happy that he was able to work on his shit so that they could be together. And do what was best for their family together in a way that they
Yeah.
both felt seen and supported, that they were both getting their needs met. It felt like they could both finally speak up about what they needed, and the other was
Yeah.
willing to listen and help make sure that it happened. When he saw her art show and he was just like, wow, I finally get it. I was not like in this world with you, but now here I am.
Yeah.
I thought it was so beautiful.
Me
I
too.
thought it was very touching and tender. I didn't have any like, oh, he's such a great guy kind of stuff. I was just like, yeah, that feels like a normal sort of reaction to like
This
working
is the
on
basic
yourself.
expectation.
Well, yeah, well, that too. I mean, yes. But he wasn't like arrogant about it,
No.
I guess, is what I'm getting at. He was humbled by what he wasn't understanding before. And I think that that's something that I, as a woman, would like to see with more of the men in my life, is them understanding that we are living a very different experience than them.
Yeah, and it was very, like, that response and that ending was actually very satisfying to me and, like, calming to my nervous system, and it felt, like, really regulated and really good. Like, that.
Loved it. I agree. I loved it, and it felt real.
Yeah.
Considering this was such a weird, like, I remember when she first turned into a dog and she was like running down the street and she was looking at everything and she could see all these colors. I was like, well, that's not very accurate. Like, dogs don't see in color like that. And then I was like, chill out, Jinx. This is a movie about a woman turning into a dog. It's not a scientific documentary about dogs.
That's so funny.
You know, considering that it was such a like fantastical movie in that way, the ending felt very real. It felt like two people who really worked on themselves and came to this like agreement about how they were going to do better together and support each other. It felt real. It didn't feel like a cheesy rom-com, chick flick, blah, 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 whatever you want to call it. It felt very real.
I really appreciate that you were able to connect with this movie. I really appreciate that you like wanted to get in my little world when I invited that. So thank you for stepping into this like weird version of motherhood with me for a minute. And yeah, I just, to all the moms out there, you are not alone. This is a crazy experience of like death, loss, but also transformation and growth. And, embrace it, because if you're there, like, that's the only way you're going to get out the other end.
I really appreciate that. Thank you. I'm so glad that I had an opportunity to get some insight into what you were feeling, and in this like artistic way, right, through film.
Yeah.
Because I feel like that helped me to understand some things that maybe you might not be able to express in words, right? Like turning into a dog, and that like that's not something maybe you could express in words. Or maybe if you did, I would be like, what the fuck? You feel like you're turning into a dog? I mean, maybe I wouldn't, because I'm pretty weird. But so I appreciate you sharing that and giving me the opportunity to learn more about you and what's going on for your experience, because I feel like that's how we can really learn how to support each other and love each other.
Exactly.
It's really important to know the emotional needs of the people we care about and to do our best to honor those. That doesn't mean we're responsible for meeting them, but I, wanted to honor what you were feeling. So thank you for giving me some insight. And I also want to say, I really hope that you're able to, if you don't already, have a group of friends like the one that she ends up making in this movie, because I really I wasn't sure about them at first. I was very like skeptical and I wasn't sure if I trusted them. And then when I saw that they treated her well and they weren't mean and they were like these really lovely, supportive people for her, I was just so happy that she had these friends. And so I hope that you have friends like that in your life as well, Miss Minx. And
very lucky.
I hope that for all the mothers out there.
Same.
So this is typically the time when we would mention our offers. And today I'm just going to say that this is a reminder that we're not going to have the offerings that we did once have available any longer. Some of them might come back reworked, but right now we are taking a break. I've realized that I wasn't being fully authentic to myself and my purpose. And so I am realigning myself to better reflect the kind of impact I want to create in the world.
Yay. Thanks for sharing that.
Minx, I know that you have some news to share too. And so would you like to do that now?
Yeah. Over the last 6 months or so, I have been invited to uh, take part in putting together a proposal to buy and run Gaia University, which is how Jinx and I met in the first place. So that deal went through a few weeks ago and it's official. So I'm currently acting as the COO of Gaia U, the new version of that. So we're going to be having some courses and offerings available, and I can maybe share that here. A lot of that stuff should resonate with what Jinx and I have been doing. Yay! So that's what's going on
Yay.
in my world.
It's so expansive. I called it a world-changing project, and I am so happy for you and
Thank you.
grateful for you for stepping into this new self-concept and this
Mm,
new role for yourself because it's so important in our world. And thank you for doing that. I appreciate you.
yay! Thanks. You too.
I
Awesome.
feel
So
like we would cuddle right now if we
I
were together. We
know,
could
I know. I
cuddle.
wish we could.
All right, so we want to give everybody an embodiment exercise for this week. And I think it's kind of straightforward.
It's an easy one.
What do I like to say? It's simple, but it might not be easy. That's going to be up to
Okay, fair
you. And
enough.
if you need to
Yeah.
push against your edges here. So find your inner night bitch. How feral will you allow yourself to be? How feral will you allow yourself to be in private? And how feral will you allow yourself to be in public?
Yeah.
That could be interesting to see what the distance is there between those two versions of yourself.
Yep.
And Minx had this great suggestion that if you don't know where to start, just start by howling at the moon tonight.
That's something me and my daughter love to do together. So, yeah, if you can see the
I'm going to do
moon,
it.
even if you can't, just go out, step outside and, yeah, be a little werewolf.
Yes. We're going to have some planetary alignments coming up soon, too. So you can howl at all the
Exciting.
planets. I think that that's a really fun one, too, because it just feels very much like not just connecting to your inner night bitch or your inner wildness, but also connecting to the rest of the world, right? Like the moon. It's very somewhere out there.
Very feminine as well.
Yes, very feminine. That's true. Thank you all so much for joining us for this episode where we were talking about Nightbitch. I really enjoyed being able to listen to your perspective, Minx, on how motherhood is so powerful and how it changes so much within a woman, both internally and externally, and how it's really like a portal to
Yes.
not just a new life for this being that you brought into the world, but for yourself
Yeah.
and your self-concept. And I remember this part of the movie too, where one of the characters were talking about how powerful they were because they were literally growing bones while they were pregnant.
Yes.
And that's just, it is. It's so powerful to think about these types of things. And so I feel like this was really a call for us to connect with our inner mother, even if we're not a mother, because we still need to mother ourselves. And we can understand our mother, even if our mother may have not been able to give us the things that we needed. I think that something that this movie and this discussion today has even given me insight for is the ways that people judge mothers in general. And that's like a society thing, and how I have also judged my own mother in that way. Now, don't get me wrong. There were other things going on in my home that were like violent and that this does not like apply to.
Yeah.
But I really do see how much pressure she was under to do things that are like expected to be done to sort of support the status quo. So I appreciate this opportunity to explore that with you today.
Thank you for stepping into this world.
Thank you all for joining us. We really appreciate you. Please follow, subscribe, rate, like, review, and share. And if you are listening on Spotify, we invite you to interact with our polls and questions. If you haven't seen it yet, check out Nightbitch. It is currently streaming on Hulu, and you can also check out the book by the same name. Thanks again for joining us, and until next time, revel on.